Hey guys, this is Johnny. Three blog, um, or sorry, Threcast. What episode is this? I think it's like episode 8 or something. Well, anyways, I've got two new friends with me. I've got my friend Normie and Count Orcock from Twitter. How are you guys doing?
Hello, I'm doing good. How about you?
Yeah,
I'm
man, I'm
doing good.
doing pretty well.
Great, great. So in this stream, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics that all kind of intersect each other. We're going to be talking about hipsters primarily, I think, and we're going to be talking about how that intersects with things like autism, homosexuality, cluster B, and I think it's something that I've always wanted to find information about because I've always been around hipsters. I've always like known people like that. Even when I was back in high school, like I was best friends with a hipster in Brooklyn, and there's something really wrong with these people. I kind of use past tense when I say that I used to hang out with people like that, but um, there is just something really wrong with them. Like I've had people like stalk me for years. I've had hipsters like find my docs and like threaten to, call the police on me. Um, there's I've seen lots of allegations of abuse and lawfare and stalking and all sorts of like really really weird stuff that you wouldn't think would be associated with people who are so reserved and so aloof and hip and social, right?
Huh. And it's all calculated.
Yeah, and the last few weeks or so, I came up with a theory that all these people are really autistic. It's that hipsterism is actually a sophisticated form of autistic masking.
Mhm.
Um, and I think all hipsters are probably um, cluster B. I think that all the ones that I've known, the ones that are really earn it and really do the whole like performance, like the whole performative the way of dressing and the way of presenting themselves and so forth. They've always been deeply pathological, and I don't trust any of them.
Yeah, I haven't known too many of them in real life. The first exposure I had to one of these people recently, which was really
This is a certified hood classic.
Yeah. So we just cut out a thing
technical
about
difficult.
someone. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties. Um, yeah, but these kinds of people, like like they present as popular, as highly social, um, and they're very convincing because they're always surrounded by lots and lots of very popular people. But in high pressure social situations, it's like they just fall apart. Like they just start spurging out.
Really.
They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. Um, and the more that I look at these people, the closer that I look at them, and people that I would normally never think of as autistic, they just they seem like they're really good at hiding it.
hmm Well, their whole the way, particularly how they interact with people of the opposite sex, like women, but just their whole socialization style in general, it's very rehearsed.
Yeah, and they're
They
also really yeah,
they
and they're
systematize
also
it.
sorry, what'd you say?
They systematize it basically based on
Yeah,
observation.
yeah, they systematize it. And what you said about women was interesting because I've noticed that a lot of these people are also really big into, and you wouldn't think they'd be interested in this, but they're big into like dating coach stuff. Like they're really big into like
Mm.
black pill, incel, like red pill pickup MGTOW stuff. Like I'm surprised. I'm actually really surprised that they're into that kind of stuff. But I guess a kind of, it
In what
fits neatly
capacity
into
do they
their
like? In what capacity do they bring these things up in conversation, like ironically, or uh,
unironically.
okay? So this is earnest. Okay, this is earnest attachment to them. Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Um, so, but the other thing is like they all have obsessive interests. They all have these very, very narrow interests. And normies just really don't have interests. Normies just really they kind of just they follow culture and they follow what's on the menu, right? That's kind of how they work. Hipsters, they always cluster around places that have lots of autistic people. So like on Reddit, for example, you have all these different these subreddits where it's dedicated to a special interest. And so you've got these like really spurgy people, and then you've got these hipsters over here who are kind of like policing the community, and they're kind of calling people out and screen capping people and making fun of them on Twitter, or they're like complaining about the quality of the content, even though it really doesn't matter. And
Yeah. What you see on Reddit is that the people who are kind of congregating around autistic people, but who are maybe one level less autistic or slightly more adept, um, is sort of they create like splinter groups called like the circle jerks for the same interest, and they'll all coalesce into a mob, and they'll have like this secret backroom conversation where they post screen caps of all of the slightly more autistic people around them and make fun of them in like a closed group setting.
yeah, it's really
Oh.
weird. And this is even what really stands out to me is there is this really, really autistic community. It's called the Fire Alarm community. And they're
Mhm.
basically a bunch of special kids who are obsessed with fire alarms. And what's crazy about this community is that there's lots and lots of drama. And there's like a whole documentary about all the drama that goes on in this community where they're just special kids that are obsessing over fucking fire alarms. It's crazy. Um and so there's something there that's very similar, you know? Um I remember there was this one guy in the vaporwave community. He was very popular, and he what was it? Like everyone thought he was like really cool, he was really aloof, he was really social, he was way more popular and smart, and he would make fun of people. Like he would drag people online over making stupid posts about like Simpsons Wave or whatever. And what was it? Then he had like this huge spurg out where like he would just do like really embarrassing things, like really like the kind of stuff that would get you on like a forum, like where they talk about foolish people. Um
Uh-huh.
I remember he made like he made a post talking about how he's interested in like transsexual pornography, and like I remember he like tried to make like his own version of like The Office. Like he shot his own like show and like everyone was making fun of it. And there was and then later it turned out that this guy was like emotionally abusing his girlfriend or something. Like he was just being really spurgy. But it's really interesting. And what I also found interesting was that this person um would be like really nasty to people. And then when they started releasing albums that were like cool, then he would start being like really, friendly to them, giving them good reviews on his little podcast. So it's these people are like they're clearly autistic, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think it's just kind of a systematized strategy to collect the most social capital in whatever like aspie fiefdom that they're in,
I
for
think
the
so.
purpose
Like,
of getting a girlfriend, having influence, making money?
yeah, I mean, and I think that's where like the narcissism comes in. Like, I think that when you're autistic and you have NPD or you just have narcissistic tendencies generally, then you start to like naturally act like a hipster. And so you start using irony, and sarcasm, and you pretend to be aloof. You try to systematize what's cool.
Hmm.
You try to present yourself in sort of an incomprehensible aesthetic. And even I myself, I've noticed that when I was younger, like I had some sort of hipster tendencies, and they're kind of emergent. And it's sort of a way of like defending yourself. Um, and I've also noticed there's a connection to what Joseph Nicolosi talked about with defensive detachment, where homosexuals would use irony. They'll pretend to be above it all. They will they will speak very little, right? They'll try to make conversations more about cleverness. Um, that's something that he pointed out. So I think
Like the
there's
the
yeah
5,000 quotes we have from Oscar Wilde.
yeah. Oscar
Enormous
Wilde's a
quote
great
maker.
example.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks kind of spurgy. He I remember he went to like America with like a big sunflower on his like coat. Like he would do like flamboyant things, like and he I think he kind of played with irony, kind of he would dress in a way that was sort of like making fun of uh the aristocracy. Um so it's another example.
Yeah, I think that the interests that they cultivate and put on and pretend to be into in the communities they join, do you think these are actual genuine like neuroautistic interests, or do you think they're adopting them for the reason of, taking a pose and situating themselves in an environment where they can collect a lot of social capital? Because with stuff like music taste, it's a very huge like group signaler to be into certain bands, which I'm sure is why a lot of autistic people congregate around the same artists.
Yeah, I think the tastes I think it's both because like say you have like a guilty pleasure, you can't really
Hmm.
share that. So um I guess we're really talking about what interests are, how they present
Uh-huh.
themselves. So they will genuinely have interests in certain things, but they kind of filter them based on, how does this look, right? Um,
Yeah, but they can even absorb the guilty pleasures through kind of an ironic presentation. This is what I was talking about
yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
This guy
that's a
was
great
talking about
point.
my roommate said that Lil Wayne was a genius. And obviously, if you listen to Lil Wayne's lyrics, like under no circumstances can you call him a genius. But what they do is they take what would be their guilty pleasure or something that would, accrue them less social capital for being into because it's too mainstream, it's too hokey, too corny, and they'll move it up to kind of a realm of like ironic appreciation or create a new category for it where they'll call it
Yeah,
genius in a kind of ironic way, in a way that creates distance from you, so that you can't even criticize any of their taste. Because if you criticize them for calling XYZ like ridiculous thing genius, they've already taken your criticism into account and have like optically smoothed that over and incorporated it into like their like ironic assessment of their guilty pleasure being genius. So that's like an example of like kind of a detachment, a defensive style of appreciation for things that they tend to exhibit.
yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like the soy face, like the soy grin, where
Hmm.
like this is something usually like millennials do, I think, where someone that's like not attractive, someone that feels unattractive, that's overweight or whatever, they'll take a photo of themselves with like their mouth open, like I can't believe you're looking at this fat idiot, like kind of look, and it's like it's sort of a way of like in beforing people's criticism. It's sort of a way of like I'm self-aware. I'm self-aware that I'm ugly and disgusting. Um but hipsters do it a little differently because they not only like um use self-awareness, but they kind of imply that they know something that you don't. Like they're actually like really smart, and they have some sort of super genius reason for liking this music or dressing a certain way. And they do it in they actually like it's not I would say it's probably less defensive than the soy grin because it's more like ostentatious, it's more flamboyant, it's more aggressive, on the offensive.
Yeah. On the topic of defensiveness and the soy face, you'll notice they never have any pictures where they're actually smiling into the camera. They'll do things like flip
Yeah,
off the camera. They'll do intentionally juvenile things, also in kind of like an overly ironic way. Like they kind of have this like wry look on their face, like they know what they're doing is kind of over the top. But at the same time, they don't want anyone to get a good look at their face in a normal configuration because they're kind of very insecure about their appearance. And they want to
yeah,
present a way where if someone insults their appearance, they have kind of an out to where they can say they were just making a funny face, or it was an off shot, or I look stupid on purpose, like you said.
yeah. What was it? I think like a few years ago, I started noticing this, that every hipster, like that I know of, or every hipster I've seen online, they all do this. They all take these selfies where they have like a bizarre look on their face, but like their eyes are dead. Like they like I feel like it's almost like a grandiose statement. Like it's sort of like denigrating one's immediate surroundings, that what's inside is like calculating, it's intelligent, it's sophisticated, but everything on the outside um is just like artifice. It's something that um like there's something that you could never penetrate, in other words.
Yeah.
So I don't know I think Sam Vaknin has said he's probably talked a little bit about irony. I haven't really I should really study that more, but I've for years I've been studying NPD, I've been studying cluster B because I've known lots of people that I initially trusted, and then they turned out to be like just really really awful people. Um and so I've been able to identify these people like early, and every single time I meet a hipster, they're always like this. They're always like really abusive people that, and they also tend to be like ephebophiles, right? They all have some or other take on the age of consent. They all um lie. They all just tell lies about themselves. They tell lies for no reason. Um they have like an interest in um starting business, like starting like um get rich quick schemes. That's a big thing with them. Like they'll start, like I remember this one guy, he wanted to start like an isolation tank business with me, and that I was going to like have an isolation tank in my house basically, or in my apartment.
What
And
was he
like I'm
do?
not even kidding, like this guy quit his job and then like wanted me to like start some sort of like weird business where I'd have the isolation tank in my room. I remember another guy who wasn't a hipster, but he had hipster tendencies. Um, this guy wanted me to start like some business with him where like he would like make, what was it, like courses on Amazon to like scam libtards out of money, like that it'd be like some new age spiritual thing. And he sent me a rich text document, like or sorry, a .txt, with like all these like stupid made up words in them, and like each like stupid made up word like represented love or karma or just something like that, like Toki equals love, uh boo boo equals intelligent, like something really stupid like that. And I just told
Huh.
him no. And I remember this other hipster wanted me to start a gallery with him, like, well, not with him, but he wanted like I was gonna like send him prints or something. I was gonna send prints to his gallery. He's gonna start a gallery, and it was gonna be this business that he did or whatever. And I remember there was this other hipster who ran a record label, and he couldn't deliver the records because he kept there were all sorts of problems with it, and he kept messing it up, and there was all sorts of drama surrounding it. I mean, these people are really, they really have an entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, I think what is it, Warren Buffett or whatever, he'd be really impressed with these people. But That's another
Well,
thing with them.
gallerist and record label owner are both extremely high social capital positions in New York, and another thing that's pretty high social capital is having a business because you have or having a very low maintenance business because you have a lot of money and you also have a lot of free time. So
Yeah.
these kind of tie into sort of a foundational lack of a belief in what you're doing or an identity about your job and um, wanting to get to the end point.
Yeah, I think a lot of them just want to get out of work. And I guess I can't blame them. I mean, maybe I'm a little narcissistic for wanting to get out of working, but um
I don't know about that.
yeah, anyways, I've been like studying the biographies of hipsters. Like I read a really really long biography of Don Van Vliet, otherwise known as Captain Beefheart. And he was a really, really abusive guy, and he would just make things up about himself. And I remember at one point, like he would always take people out of the credits. He was always stealing money from the band.
Mhm.
He was always beating his band up. I remember one time, the drummer, Drumbo, was like practicing one morning, and Captain Beefheart comes up to him and is like, "Hey, can you play a strawberry on the drums?" He had like a very whimsical way of telling people to do things, right? And the
Mm.
guy played something, and I guess he didn't like it, so he picked him up and threw him down the stairs. Like that's that's what these people were like. That's what people like Hunter S. Thompson were like. That's what people like. I would say Oscar Wilde was like, right? Oscar Wilde, he is that type of person. The hipster is a psychological type. It's not. I know a lot of people get confused because of that subculture from the 2010s. What is it with the stomp, clap, hey stuff like? But it's really a psychological type, and it's you see the same behaviors over and over and over again. That these people are just really cruel, and they have
Yeah,
trouble with reality.
and related to the thing earlier about age of consent, Oscar Wilde famously in Andre Gide's diary is exposed as a pederast. I think he got them both like 10-year-old prostitutes or something one night. Andre Gide writes about how he had a very spiritual sexual experience with a boy who Oscar Wilde procured for him.
Oh yeah, I also studied Oscar Wilde. I listened to the trial of Oscar Wilde, and then I did a whole bunch of research on it. He would
Uh-huh.
go to Algeria with his lover. I forget what his name was, like Lord Alfred or whatever. And they would go and pick up young boys, and that's what they would do in Algeria. Um, and yeah, that's what he was up to. And they
Yeah,
would go to like the poor parts of London or wherever, and they'd find all these like kids on the street, and they'd give them silver cigarette cases. Um, and then they would they'd have like parties, and then they would basically groom them and have sex with them, and that's what they did.
yeah. So I guess with the whole constellation between NPD and autism and hipsters. You were talking earlier about how they would spurg out incredibly often in like dramas and social situations in their communities. Do you think this is because with them systematizing social interaction and putting on this kind of cool facade when something contemporaneous happens that makes them feel kind of foolish or shameful? They have what's called a narcissistic injury, which usually leads to. I think this is studied. I think it
Yeah,
usually leads to extremely violent outbursts, murderous outbursts.
I think
Is
so.
that what?
Yeah. Yeah. So like you have someone that's autistic, someone that's very rigid, trying to systematize a culture which is constantly changing.
Mhm.
And so they're trying to rigidly extract narcissism, but then they encounter people that um cannot be consistently controlled, like someone that they've never a style of person they've never encountered before, and
Uh-huh.
so that just throws them off, and then they treat this person incorrectly, like they don't extract the attention the way that they normally do, like it just doesn't really work, and so then they spurg out, and then and they like try to like start a lawsuit or something, or they.
Yeah.
I remember there was this one guy. There was this one hipster. He when he would get rejected by girls, he would go out into he would run around New York City and put up flyers with like the girl's face on it and like all of her contact information, and he would like make a spectacle out of it. So, and then what happened was that guy like he kept trying these like weird intimidation tactics on other people, and they basically just destroyed. He became a huge laughing stock. So
Hmm.
like that guy just got completely destroyed. But you see this over and over and over again that they're very like they're very like social. They're very like popular for a time, and then something changes, and then they just spurg out and they implode. So
Did you have
they
more to say about how their interaction style relates to the homosexual defensive detachment and the Nicolosi thing? I think we got off that pretty quick.
yeah, I mean, there's so many topics that go into this, so I kind of just wandered over here, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
homosexuality is another thing. These people seem to have bisexual tendencies. Like a lot of them are like formerly gay or have experimented or have something in the closet, or they're into transsexual stuff or whatever. Even Don Van Vliet, Captain Beefheart, is a very masculine guy. Drumbo said that he made some comments about how he was queer, um, and how like he like would dress them up in girly clothes and stuff like that. And so he was thinking maybe there's something. Yeah, but I've seen this many times where you'll see a hipster and like there's something sexually ambiguous going on there.
Well, it is kind of, I don't know if this, I guess not in the 60s, but it is kind of, you do kind of accrue a sort of social capital for being sexually ambiguous in certain parts of the country, especially in big cities and like really subcultural or countercultural
Mhm.
movements. So that would kind of line up. If it's put on,
Yeah.
I don't
Um, I think
know.
the stuff that I've seen was genuine. Like I can see someone like David Bowie kind of putting it on. I know David Bowie has been accused of doing that. Like he's just a straight
Mhm.
guy, but he like pretends to be more androgynous or whatever. Like he'll put on some Nazi clothes or whatever. But you know what's interesting? The guy who was criticizing him, I believe it was Morrissey. Um, he's being like really autistic about what his values are, like what his punk values are, and
Uh-huh.
he's like he harshly criticizes all these other artists because they don't live up to his values, to his rigid autistic values. I just keep seeing this over and over again, and there again, you see these bisexual tendencies, see these homosexual tendencies.
Yeah, in ambiguous sexual presentation among hipsters, in the last like 5, 10 years, or maybe even more, they started painting their nails. So that's
Mhm.
another thing they put on. Um, but I don't associate them painting their nails with like homosexual activity. Kind of just
Yeah, I don't necessarily like. I look at
it's
someone like Blade, and I don't think that
mhm,
Blade's gay. Like I just think it's just a style. It's just art. It's just whatever.
mhm. I think it
Um,
has something to do with appealing to women.
maybe when it comes to like art, I don't know. People do all sorts of weird stuff with art, so I'm not even really sure. I think a lot of it. You know what it is? I think the androgyny with people like Blade and Echo 2K and artists like that, like those sad boys people, I think that's actually more about it's like more of a spiritual thing in the sense that they want their music to be like melancholy and like disembodied. And so it's more like genderless, I guess. It's more neutral.
What do you
It has
think of
less
the non musicians, just hipsters painting them, which a lot do?
I haven't really thought much of it. I mean, I would think like someone that dresses like that, like someone that does the nails and wears weird clothing, wears tech wear, wears whatever. To me, that just strikes me as someone that thinks that they're special. That's someone that.
Well, you have kind of the dirtbag sleazy type who wear like Carhartt jackets and beanies and have the mustache, and they also paint their nails black.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's something like that. I don't know. It's
Is it
yeah, it
kind
is
of like a
appealing. It
symbol
is
that they're
appealing to
detached from
feminine.
like? Are they detached from traditional masculinity? Is that what they're trying to give off to women?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a way to signal like I'm a leftist guy, basically. Like when you look at someone, I don't want to go on about iDubbbz because I think everyone just honestly, I think people just talk way too much about iDubbbz. I think the iDubbbz stuff is not that interesting. But like guys who dress like iDubbbz and do the
Yeah.
whole mustache thing and whatever, like yeah, I think it's just a signal like I'm a leftist guy. I'm non-threatening. Like I'm on your side, whatever. I don't even think it's I don't
You
think
don't
it's
think
like
this goes through the
hard.
hipster vortex at all? You think it's something completely different?
I don't think like a lot of people will say that it's just about being performative for women. I think it's more like a way of saying like I'm a leftist. I'm someone that
Okay.
you can socialize with. That's sort of the way I interpret it.
All right.
But yeah, like there are a lot of there are a lot of people that dress like hipsters. Those people are not hipsters in my opinion. Like most like your typical urban teddy bear, like that kind of person, like that person usually does have a soul even if it is a very small one. Um like a hipster is like you know them when you see them. Their entire personality is like based around irony and detachment and eccentricity. It's like it's a completely fake person.
Okay,
Um
got it. I understand what you mean now.
yeah, um they use very few words, like they're very laconic in the way that they speak. They always like pretend to not care. Like it reminds me of like it's kind of like with gay culture where when you see a flamboyant homosexual, like that person is gay, right?
Uh,
With a hipster, it's the same thing. Like when they act like they put on this like aloof exterior, like that's a hipster. That's the way I look at it.
okay, that makes sense. Because you're collating them with a bunch of these personality traits or correlating them with that.
Yeah,
This is
and I think the base of it is autism because
mm,
I don't think that allistic people really act like this. What hipsters do is way too sophisticated,
uh-huh.
So, but yeah, so I guess now we could talk about homosexuality, trauma, that kind of stuff,
Right.
because this is also related. So I became interested in the topic years back when I was researching what was it? It was like I was reading an article about penguins or sorry, about seals that would try to mate with penguins. And so I was reading this article because I'm interested in random topics. So one of the topics I was obsessed with was like interspecies mating, and so instances of that happening because that's really weird. You'd think like an animal wouldn't be. You would think that that animals would evolve to not waste their resources on mistakes, right? That they'd be able to
Right.
identify people, animals that are the same species and animals that aren't. Um, But no, the seals try to mate with penguins, and this is actually really common. And so when I was reading this article, I was like, wait a second, what if all of these so-called cases of gay animals are actually just cases of mistaken identity? So you have like I don't know, a monkey, like two monkeys are doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and then the researcher's like, "Oh my God, look, they're gay," right? And so, and knowing about how biased academics are, it wouldn't be surprising if that's what they were doing. And so I went on Wikipedia, I looked up the list of gay animals, and they list basically all of them.
Ah,
So it's not like like the way that they present it, it's sort of like, oh no, some species are gay and some aren't. No, 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 they list all of them. So antelopes are gay, beetles are gay. I don't know, certain frogs
yeah.
are gay.
I mean, there's a concerted effort to take a bunch of the evidence and use it to support the notion that homosexual humans are born that way and that there's some sort of inbuilt naturalistic element to this. And they used
Yeah,
animals like salvos in the argument. So all of the
yeah,
research is kind of it's like a social game. Yeah.
yeah. And the
Well,
other thing about sorry, what were you gonna
Were you gonna
say?
say something? Yeah.
well, I think that there's a difference between human homosexuals and then there are animal homosexuals in that human homosexuals, for the most part, don't misidentify between the sexes or between identities. Like they genuinely go, I don't like women, I don't like vaginas, I want to go for men. But there are those cases where, for example, in Thailand, where they take hormones at very young ages, where they will, develop female features over time, and it's like kind of like a replicant female, but I don't think that that's the same way with animals. I'm honestly more convinced that these animals are mostly just animals that have not gotten the chance to mate with a female. So it's like either they've lost the females, they're not getting anything from the females, and they're just they have a lot of like sexual energy that they need to release, and it's just
I
kind of a
see.
temporary thing. So I think that at least.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Um,
Yeah, I don't know what goes on with the circuitry with homosexual animals, nor do I want to correlate it with human sexual homosexuality because I do believe human homosexuality is about like, higher order consciousness and uh
yeah, yeah, I
developmental
agree.
factors. But I was just pointing out how um a lot of the science is they're motivated to say that the animals are acting homosexually in the, in the same nature that homosexual humans are acting homosexually, which based on my conception of homosexuality, would practically be impossible. But they're using it as kind of proof to say that humans can be born homosexual in order to make the category unassailable. And any sort of psychological investigation that goes into homosexuality is hugely vilified in the mainstream media. You're talking about,
Mhm.
conversion therapy or anything related to like causal factors for homosexuality. Even though people investigate stuff like causal factors for fetishes or other, or like
Yeah,
hypersexuality, whenever you get to like aberrant sexuality, like homosexuality, it's suddenly off the table. Suddenly oh, that's been seen in nature with other animals, and that's just a black box, and it just is okay. Like that's a topic that can't be broached. And I think that's what
yeah,
a lot of the piling up of the animal evidence is pointing towards.
Well, in
yeah.
my opinion, oh yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, no, you say something.
So, for my interests also go into things like diet and hormones and all those kinds of things. So I think the difference between the animals and with humans is that, in a sense, I do think that they are, I think that there are homosexuals that are, in a sense, born gay with quotation marks. But
Mhm.
I don't think that these are like normal, things that would happen in nature. I think that they are largely the result of intergenerational vegetable oil consumption. And you
Mhm.
can read things about, what Ray Peat said about these vegetable oils and how like very estrogenic they can be, and how
Yeah,
they slow down the like thyroid hormones, and they can mess up with your sexuality. I know that even Augenis Vonderplanitz, the creator of the Primal Diet, also talked about plastic usage for canning foods, like because the can like when the Industrial Revolution happened, there was a lot of canned foods. But because people were getting metal poisoning, they would be lining the cans with plastic sprays.
mhm.
And because of these plastics, they over generational like time, they start to they create homosexuals and transsexuals and all these people with very like deviant like mindsets. Like I genuinely do think a lot of what is going on today is because of a lot of I would say like contamination of like external contamination. Like I think some people think that health, in their opinion, means, well, as long as that person is functional for what I want them to do. But I'm more of the opinion that as long as there are external and internal contaminations, even if that person is functional, that doesn't mean that that person will not start to feel the effects of whatever you're exposing them to. Not only them, like as a person, but potentially their descendants. So, and that's not just like chemical or biological, but it's also social. Like, for example, when you have all of these like things like the internet, like and with COVID, I would say that that's a kind of social contamination of natural human bonding because with COVID, it made everybody very antisocial. It created all these very specific hyper like clique communities where I think people became like in like in a sense more autistic, or at
Uh,
least more autistic people could flock to these very niche communities. And I guess with with also with more intrusion of normies into their very specific niches, so like anime, video games, etc. Um, but yeah, that's yeah, I'm probably kind of going a little bit long-winded into it, but that's just my
Well, it's
opinion on
okay.
it.
yeah, there do seem to be very strong statistical correlations between aberrant sexualities like transsexuality to homosexuality and autisms. So diet can definitely play into it. But there are also a lot of really strong developmental correlations. Like I think it's been I think over the course of a bunch of studies, it's been highly statistically proven that the more older brothers one has, a much higher chance it is for them to become homosexual. So there are a lot of things going on with interpersonal dynamics as well. But what you say about autistic people, I think autistic people are very, when they get into big groups like that, stuff like homosexuality or transsexuality can kind of be transmitted in kind of like a mimetic way, where autistic people seem to be much more porous when it comes to being influenced by ideas or images that like strike them for whatever reason. And it kind of becomes a fixation. This is huge with transsexuality, as far as I've seen, and it can spread very easily.
Yeah. Um, what was it? When I first read that article and I got this idea about gay animals being fake, I later developed the idea that homosexuality itself was fake. So I started to think that, why is it that we look at transgenderism and we don't take that seriously, but then we look at homosexuality and we do take that seriously. And so my thought process was, what if homosexuality in humans is actually just a different style of autogynephilia, and that's why gay men, they talk and gesture like women. Maybe they just like it. I mean, they just like to, because for sexual reasons, for autogynephilic reasons. But when I got into Joseph Nicolosi's work, I started to move to his opinion because I think that it really is just like post traumatic.
Mhm.
Like because you know what it was. Um, in my early 20s, I started to notice that I was like really obsessed with older women, and so like when because I normally wouldn't like pay any attention to the older women, in my daily life, but when they would say kind things to me, when they say nice things to me, then I'd get really interested. Um, and I started to realize that cougarism is actually very similar to homosexuality. Someone pointed that out to me because it's not. What they said was it wasn't like a productive relationship. It's. At first, I thought it was like we find older women attractive because if she's attractive at that age and her genes must be really good, but that doesn't really line up with you know what we know about fertility and like the quality of the offspring. So um, I don't know. I don't think that's really the reason. I just think that cougarism is just like the heterosexual form. It's like the same thing as homosexuality, except
Uh-huh.
it's you're into some older woman, some if you're a woman, like maybe some older man or whatever. But I know someone that is I know someone that only dates like older men, and when she was a kid, um, her parents were like not very nice to her. Her parents were very very strict with her, and they would they gave her like the whole tough love parenting, and I think that's where it came from for me, because I think I was just very sensitive, and that's what you find with um, homosexuals, is that they're these like very sensitive, more artistically minded people, and I really think that autism is probably the basis for all this stuff. Like autism is the basis for homosexuality. It's the basis for um, cluster B. I think it's the basis of hipsterism, because you have this like very sensitive systematizer, this very sensitive person that probably can't handle um, their developmental years going awry, and getting attacked by other students, or by
Mhm.
teachers or whatever. It just warps their personality.
Um, there's an entire sort of link in my head between first of all, homosexuality and having a very complicated relationship with one's own mother in childhood and going on, but also cougarism. But this is going to get a little graphic, but in like the pornographic tendencies of the homosexual, it's actually like probably above random that they're also into these kind of um, sexual instances where the guy is like very much smaller than the woman,
Oh,
and
I see.
it's like this really giant motherly figure. And there are a
Yeah.
lot of homosexuals that have a proclivity towards this at the same time as just being flat out homosexual. So putting all of that together, when I read the Nicolosi article about uh, complicated relationships with one's mother, and when I saw you posting about cougarism, a lot of it seemed very similar. Maybe there's just kind of a difference in some sort of level of, I don't know, what would it be, disgust response to the idea of being with a man or something like that. I'm not sure, but they do seem like very similar.
I mean, like, I have like a really high disgust response, so I won't even use like certain curse words.
Uh huh.
So like, that to me is just like totally gross. That's just like totally disgusting.
Hmm.
So, um, because I think that hmm, like I think because that's what I've been thinking though. Like it must be the disgust barrier. Like if you
Hmm.
like, for example, one thing I've noticed is that homosexuals tend to use like grosser language. Like they tend to use more graphic language.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's all about eating ass with homosexuals nowadays and like doing like
yeah,
really less sanitary things.
yeah. So like, I think it's really like the sanitary considerations. Um, but um, but it also has to be like, were you actually traumatized in that way? Like, did you actually have like a really bad relationship with the father? Like, but I mean, at
Uh,
that point, we have
I,
to like get into the mechanics of how trauma gets eroticized in the first place, which I can get into. But
uh, are you talking about like the suspension bridge effect or something like that?
oh, what's that?
Um, Essentially, the brain associating like high romantic response and like high fear response as the same thing. So people getting like aroused in very dangerous or frightening situations.
Oh, I don't subscribe to that. I heard that theory. It didn't really make sense to me.
Okay.
Um, I did come up with something recently though, after reading Zipf. Um, so for those who don't know, George Kingsley Zipf was a thinker from the early 20th century who argued that all systems gravitate towards the path of least resistance. So like even like for example, like human language, for example, we use many short words that have many meanings, and few few long words that have highly specific meanings because it's economical to use language in that way. And what he found was that this economical quality was found in even infant speech. So if you take all of the infant noises, you categorize them, what you find is that the baby is actually gurgling and making noises in an economical fashion, in the same harmonic distribution. And he basically argues that these harmonic distributions are found in all systems. So the way that we think, the way that we rules, the way that we use money, the way that cities are organized. Um, and so that's who George Zipf is. And he was kind of a weird person, but I digress.
Mhm.
My idea is that we all have wants, right? Want for food, for warmth, or company, um, for I don't know, water, and we express these wants economically. So like what do you call it? So like when we want a cheeseburger, um, that want is there are filters applied to that want so that it's more specific, right? That you want food instead of wanting in general. And what I argue is that sex is basically an unfiltered want. It's basically want before it has any sort of economical filters applied to it. So um, like think about wanting a cheeseburger, but you take away all of the parameters, all of the things that are making that want specific, and you really just want to orgasm because um, that's the whole point of eating the cheeseburger, right? So get to is to down the road get to sex. That's the ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve. It's that you're trying to achieve this in a very economical manner, right? You have to go out and get resources. You have to grow. You have to engage in a society. This, that, and the other thing before you can get to the sex, right? And so what I argue is that when you're a child and say a parent is being mean to you, someone a parent is abusing you, whatever, there's a very very strong um, want there, right? That you want this person to stop harming you. You want your mother's love. You want this. You want that. So and what happens is that memory gets suppressed, and then later down the line, when you encounter a stressor, that want is expressed in an uneconomical manner. So there's no filtering to it, and so um, the idea of getting hit, makes you horny, right? And so that's my explanation for the eroticization of trauma.
How did you get to the last part? I'm a little confused.
Oh, which part?
I just didn't see how it led into being hit.
Oh, so like, say that you were hit as a child, um, you want you want that to stop, right? You obviously don't want your mom to hurt you, and there's like a very
Right.
strong want there. Um, in that moment, that want is being expressed economically. It's being expressed because like raw want, like raw desire, is orgasm. It releases a lot of energy, and it's unfocused. It's a state where you're very vulnerable. You're not really thinking clearly.
Mhm.
Your mind is wandering. It's like it's like a very vulnerable and uneconomical state. Like it's just you're releasing everything all at once.
Uh-huh.
But when you want someone to stop hitting you, then it's focused, it's structured, it's it has all sorts of parameters and specific feelings that get associated with it. When that is out of context, when you later in life, I don't know, see a bunch of whips on, a wall or something, then that want comes back, but it's not expressed economically. It doesn't have all the specificity, and
But the
so
want
that's why you
the want was
want to. That's why you
previous
want.
the want was previously a desire to not get hit, but now because it's non-economical, it becomes a desire to get hit. How does it like flip like that?
Like the specificity of the want is gone. Basically, it's
Okay.
basically a very unspecific want now. Like when you re-experience it because
So
it's out of context.
are you like associating your want state with the aspect of being hit? Is it some sort of like body memory thing, or what's going on with that?
Like
How
that,
do you get
the like the want is in your nervous system. Like you want something to stop, right? Um,
Yeah.
that want is stored there. It can be reactivated, but you might not be aware of it. And that's the thing with Joseph Nicolosi's therapy, with reparative therapy, is that it's about getting you to contextualize, restructure that want.
Uh-huh.
That what you really want is your mom to love you. What you really want is to not be hit, right? What you really want is some compassion. That's what he's
Mhm.
doing. All he's doing, and if you just look at all the steps in reparative or reintegrative therapy, it's just getting you to remember what you actually wanted and then showing compassion, basically giving yourself structure by remembering. And so
I see.
yeah, so that's basically what I'm arguing is that it's um giving structure to your wants again.
Um, so when you have an unstructured want, it's expressed in some sort of adjacent
It's
mode that's
sexual.
similar. It's sexual. Okay, it's always sexual. Oh,
Well,
so that's why there's all of these incidences between like homosexuality and like very high emotionality and very high emotional deficiencies and high emotional desires. With homosexuality, um, it's generally, I would say it's generally always about emotional desire, at least in my experience.
yeah. And obviously my model is an oversimplification,
Uh-huh.
but I mean cuz like trauma is expressed in different ways, but I think that with regards to sex, um it's just an unstructured want. That's
I
basically what that is. Because like, when you're having sex, that's like the goalpost. That's
right,
you don't need to get specific. You can just do what you actually wanted to do if you want to put it in that way.
right.
Because that's the whole point of us even having this conversation is to get to that point.
It's like Evo
Um,
psych, basically.
yeah, yeah. So and also another theory I had was this is what I was thinking before I had this theory, which was that this actually ties into Peter Levine's work because for those who don't know, Peter Levine is like this strange Jewish guy who argues that trauma is basically stored in the body and you release it by shaking, right? And so the body will
Mhm.
flutter, it will shake, and if you just like shake it off, then you get rid of the trauma. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's an interesting idea. And I noticed in something interesting I noticed is that post orgasm, the body actually like flutters. It actually tremors, and the more that you lean into it, the better that it feels. Like it releases a warmth through your body, basically. Um, and what I was thinking was maybe since sexual traumas, they tend to be like repressed memories. Maybe that's just a way of getting rid of those unneeded or unnecessary memories. Because if you look at like PTSD like forces you to remember something because it's important, right? Like if you made some mistake take, like, I don't know, like you walked into an alleyway and then someone mugged you, right? You'll always remember that because it's important to remember. Whereas like when you're like a child, like and someone hits you, it's not important because like it's just not it's not the right time to like learn from that instance. But so what I was thinking was maybe this is just sort of a way of disposing of those memories, and you know that you like, I don't know, call forth the memory and then you release the trauma or whatever. But I don't even know if I believe that
Yeah, I
anymore.
mean,
I think it's just a want.
yeah, that would be in line with kind of the general behavior of like hypersexuals after they get sexually intervened with early on, is that they'll engage in a lot of sexual activity. Um and people, I think the mainstream the psychiatric view is that what they're trying to do is they're trying to trivialize the experience of being sexually active, so as to take the initial traumatic experience and like kind of minimize it, kind of like, oh, I've had sex 1,000 times, that really wasn't a big deal, I can handle it. It's
Yeah.
just one in a series of 1,000s. But I guess this is different, where by having trying to have sex a lot and calling that memory back, you're trying to release it by shaking post orgasm. It doesn't seem to be very effective. They seem to just keep
Yeah.
doing it.
That's the thing. I noticed it wasn't, because it's not very effective.
Yeah.
But what's more effective, and I noticed this with myself, was simply like what Nicolosi says, like just accessing the actual memory, and it starts to disappear. Like once you access like what events led up to it, for some reason it just disappears. And in my opinion, that's just because it's structuring the want.
I see.
So, because like when I started exploring like what events led up to it, I just kind of stopped being interested in older women. And before I actually had like, there was a point where like I had this like really like intense compulsion, where I just like wanted some lady to like put her hands on me, be kind to me, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah, to what extent has that left you entirely?
um I mean, I occasionally have I mean, it's still there, like for the most part. Like, or what I mean is, it's still there in the sense that like there's like still residual stuff there, but
Yeah,
it's
when I
not
read
it's not like a compulsion where I need to like go and, you know, hit up ladies on whatever site or whatever.
yeah, when I read the Nicolosi case studies, it always seemed to be the case that at the end of the therapy they actually aren't disposed of homosexual desire. They can just consciously choose not to be overtaken by it. Or
Yeah,
with a more holistic vision of their life, they decide not to go for it. Or that's how I saw it explained by him in one of the books.
yeah, and the other thing too is like my case wasn't really that extreme. I don't think, like, because what I've been reading is like you know, homosexuals, they tend to have like a really compulsive need. I don't think it was like that compulsive, but there was a compulsion there. There was like this, in the more that I like explored it, like the more compulsive it became. Like where I realized I really wanted it.
Hmm.
Um so it's not, it's, what was interesting was that when I you know, again explored the things that caused it, it just it started to lose its appeal. So
Yeah, I'm kind of um. Actually, no, that's inarticulate. That's actually related to a different topic. Never mind. I was gonna say something, but it's actually not apt to what we're talking about, so I don't want to go into it.
you know, and like the more that you study trauma, the more that you study psychology, the more that you see how traumatized the people in your life are, and you just start seeing it everywhere. I mean, my one of my favorite hobbies is just to like break down people's personalities, like
Hmm.
dissect them at work, and I just see it everywhere. I see like the way that people live their lives, like the the key aspects of their personality are often come from traumatic experiences. And this is pretty interesting because I really come from, like that white nationalist, race realist community where most things are treated as genetic. And so I've kind of drifted away, or at least acknowledged the environmental, effects of one's upbringing. Because it's interesting
What's
that
your opinion?
both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, what's your opinion now regarding like discrepancies
It's a
in,
little
in
more.
tendencies for racial behavior and like how do you weigh these things against each other now?
Well, I think you know what it is. I think in the aggregate, I think on the broader scale, it tends to be more genetic. Like the larger the sample size, the more obviously genetic the phenomenon is.
Okay.
Whereas if you're looking at um, like the more individualistic you're looking, like the more people are different because of their upbringings. Like so the more, and that's kind of what's annoying about the race realist debate is that the egalitarians want you to focus on individuals. They don't want you to focus on groups. Because in groups, it's obvious that there are genetic differences. Whereas when you're looking at individuals, you can look at their backstories and, oh, look at all these things that happen to them and so forth. And they have a case there. But what's interesting is that neither side really explores the environmental influence. They all talk about it. They all reference it. Um, they give, lip service to school supplies, stuff like that. But nobody really explores trauma. In fact, there's kind of a taboo. Nobody really wants to talk it. And I mean like neither side, neither the liberals nor the reactionaries really want to talk about trauma. And I don't know
Yeah.
why. I think it's kind of annoying, but
Yeah, I mean the liberal side seems to be in a pretty compromised or inconsistent position because they're ascribing certain antisocial or aberrant behaviors of large groups to socioeconomic factors and environment. They do nothing of the sort with sexuality. Going back to that,
no.
it's essentially the talking point that there's essentially no environmental influence on sexuality, and it's like kind of genetic or downstream from birth. And they have all these
Mm.
studies they post, which
And the thing
is
is,
it's very
yeah.
strange.
And the thing is, the nurture side is interesting. I mean,
Mhm.
you could look at Dennis Noble. Dennis Noble's an interesting person. Lamarckism is an interesting idea. I'm not totally dismissive of things like Lysenkoism. I'm not totally dismissive of them because we live in a physical reality with there's objects moving all around the globe in all sorts of different ways. The idea that they only like when people try to ascribe rules to the way that objects move around, you can't do that. Objects move around in the way that they actually do. You can only stereotype, you can only
Uh,
generalize about objects.
yep.
So the idea that there could not be I don't know some sort of invisible force or some sort of thing that senses the environment and makes genetic decisions, right? That's not a crazy idea to me, especially you know given given my interest in Bill Gates, and he's arguing that there's a physical reality that we cannot see or touch. So,
Mm.
Count Orcock, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Um, when you were talking about cougarism and homosexuality, and also like the kind of that want, it kind of there was a particular author slash director that really popped to mind. Do you know Clive Barker? The
No.
guy who created the Hellraiser movies and the Hellraiser books. Are you
Oh, okay.
familiar with that
Yeah.
franchise?
Mhm.
So I know that he is a self-described, homosexual, but I've read that he at one point had like relations with this older woman, and naturally with the Hellraiser, series, with it basically being about this this cube that when you open this cube, it's like a puzzle box. It releases it mention full of these what are essentially like these BDSM demons that
Wow.
that have essentially endured so much torture that they cannot they can't distinguish pain from pleasure anymore,
Mhm.
and they whenever any new person opens the box, they would also, they would read your soul, and they want to take you, whether reluctantly or not. They will take that person, eventually turn them into another like BDSM demon, Cenobite, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that that kind of really came to mind, and I think that's very interesting that you had all these like parallels, and I
Mhm.
think that he is a case that you could probably look into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will, 'cause that's very interesting. I would say it's, like, reasonably common that homosexuals have desires of kind of having sex with women, but older women, but in kind of like an age regressed kind of thing where the women are treating them as if they're their son, which
Mhm.
kind of tie a very, like, weird relationship with the mother. Um,
I see.
like, shockingly common to where I don't wanna call it random, I wanna call it a slight correlation.
There were a few times where I was interested in watching Hellraiser, but when I looked at images of the movie, it's just the Hellraiser guy standing around. He's just standing there.
And screaming with his mouth open with the pins in his head. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that the whole movie?
Well, no, I mean, well, it depends on which one it is. I
Which
think
one it
Clive.
is? He's just standing around in the fourth one, right?
Well, I mean, you have to understand, he is not like a very mobile person. They have these essentially what I think they call him Pinhead. But he
Yeah.
was originally at one point like a World War II like soldier or something. I don't know. It doesn't really
Oh,
matter.
okay.
Essentially, he speaks with that low tone, and he's like pretty much immobile, but he uses these chains, like these telepathic like chains that he would use to essentially rip into people's skin, and then he would just like part, or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a weapon that he uses. Like he has no need for to like run or walk. He could just use his interdimensional chain bullshit and do whatever he
Yeah.
needs to do. So either way, I think um I have seen the first two Hellraiser movies. I'm very sure, and also the one that just came out just recently, a couple of years ago. But the other ones I don't think are Dwight Barker, and I think those like kind of take a bit of a tonal shift, and I think that they are liked less, I think. But I think it's
Mhm.
really more just like analyzing Clive Barker as a person, and like the kind of material that he put out, and maybe like trying to like connect these things together. That's like the most important part. But honestly, in my opinion, I kind of like I think that those kinds of things are like interesting to me, because I like I kind of like stuff that's like really dark, and like I guess trauma slop manga.
Yeah.
I think it's because and I think we can probably go into that. I haven't really spoke very much on anything, but
Mhm.
it's like stuff like oh, I think this is also another person that you would find very interesting. The author Shuzo Oshimi. He did like the most notable works that he did was there was Aku no Hana, which means the flowers of evil.
Mhm.
The recent one that was Blood on the Tracks, which this explores his relationship with a very like mentally unstable mother, a very domineering mother, and Inside Mari, which is about it's like it's kind of like there's a lot of stuff that alludes to transgenderism, because he himself is like kind of a closeted quasi transgender, in that he wants to be a woman,
Mhm.
but he simply just can't operate on their like mind wavelength. So I mean, he's clearly like an autistic man.
Yeah.
But he's a lot of the stuff is like very interesting to like look into. It's very dark, very like trauma slop
Do they tend
stuff,
to
Yeah.
be?
but
Do they tend to be very sexual comics too, or is it?
oh, way, very, very, very sexual. Yeah, like they are very overtly sexual, but he says himself that it's like more of a fascination of his, and I think that it can be seen in certain characters. Like, I don't remember what her name was in Akunohana, but there's this very troubled, girl that basically attaches to the main protagonist, and she like blackmails him because yeah, she like there's just like the stupid thing that he did, and it's like not that big of a deal, like it's kind of creepy, but it's just kind of like he's young, he's growing up, he doesn't like, he's kind of uncertain about how he should deal with things, but she's basically blackmailing him, and she like wants him to basically become this perverse monster because she has like some kind of like fascination with it. Like she wants him to become as debaucherous as possible because like she like gets something out of it. I don't think it's
Oh, I
just
see.
sexual. I think it's like a genuine fascination with like sexuality
Mhm.
that is just, yeah, it's very bizarre, but it's very like clearly like an autistic
Yeah.
trait.
Have you read Kabi Nagata?
No, that name does not come to mind.
She was this. I'm pretty sure she's autistic. She's this Japanese woman who wrote a autobiography, basically, where she is basically just confessing her private life, where um, she's like hiring like lesbian prostitutes, and it was that series that really like made me realize that homosexuality was definitely traumatic, because she literally like tells you that she wants like this like older woman to love her, basically, and how she thinks it comes from her relationship with her mom, because she had this like very very strained, very cold, very critical relationship with her. And what's so interesting about this series is you see and I guess it's a very typical case. Like, there's lots of girls that have these issues, but you see the way that her traumas are expressed through these compulsive behaviors. So she is binge eating, she's starving herself, she is cutting herself, she is she at one point she becomes an alcoholic, and she develops pancreatitis twice. So she basically screwed up her entire diet. And almost, but she would she would take some money, and she would hire lesbian escorts. And what was interesting was that at first she was interested in the sex, but as time went on, or really just during these sessions, she realized she wasn't really into it, and she started asking them to hug her. Um, and so it's and that's like I mean, that's just obviously trauma. That's obviously what can you say? And she says it in this like very honest way. Like, she's not ideological. She's not like she's not really like a
Well,
a
there's a little
typical liberal.
there's a little bit of it in there, but yeah.
There's a little bit, but it's she says things that would be very politically incorrect
Hmm.
over here. Like,
Yeah.
she talks about how like certain lesbians she knows, um, are just like into that stuff.
Mm.
How she thinks it's trauma. And the other thing was she was molested when she was a girl. She was walking home, and some random guy just like lured her off the street and just molested her. And I get the impression from this comic that her parents were kind of cold about it. Like, they weren't like that empathetic about it.
Hmm.
Um, but it was really interesting series. So
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, go ahead. I'll talk
There was also one other thing that I don't know how much this relates. Well, there is stuff about sexuality in this, but there's also like a search for novelty. I think, constantly searching for novelty is something that I think we could probably look into more. But it was in the movie, and I really like felt like kind of personally attached to this because I watched the Robert Eggers movie The Lighthouse, which is one of my favorite movies. But it's essentially about this person. It's between Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, and they essentially Robert Pattinson goes to this island to man a lighthouse with this absolutely insane old man, and essentially it's a very strange movie, but this person, Robert Pattinson has a lot of guilt on his conscience, and it kind of ruins him, that along with his extremely like sexual tendencies. But I think above all else, it's like he's most affixed to this obsession with the lighthouse itself, which is like a representation of like of like some kind of forbidden knowledge of some kind.
Hmm.
And I thought I've occupied my time with like systematization because, well, it's also because I wouldn't say that I'm like a very like hypersexual person amongst other people, but like
Hmm.
amongst myself, I am like very like kind of hypersexual, maybe out of like a need for for somebody who I think would possibly be. I feel like, I don't want to be that kind of guy, but I feel like most don't quite get why
Yeah.
I think the way that I do. And I kind of see him more or
Yeah, no,
less
that's
in a
relatable.
similar boat to me, and that I look to, tried to figure out and to systematize in order to basically fix my problems. But, usually in the end, it just kind of leaves with, you're just like kind of overwhelmed with everything, and it just kind of destroys you. And it's similar to how I kind of became the person that I am today, because I've like systematized so much that like I just kind of basically turn everything into this kind of, like almost like maybe too systematized. And it's like sometimes I don't know where to like put myself emotionally. Like I just kind of drained my instinct, and I just kind of put into this kind of very frontal lobe mindset, and it just kind of like destroyed me for a bit. But it's like kind of the opposite of when I was going through a a semi, I wouldn't say it was like a trans phase, but it was like because my hormones, I don't think my hormones were working all too well. So
Yeah.
I was like kind of transgender-esque. Like I grew out my hair long. I like felt very like feminine, like, or like kind of both like feminine and masculine, but not really either or.
Hmm.
And I basically convinced myself that like I didn't exist like at all. Like I was just like something was just all in my head. It was like a disassociative kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't want to feel pain, but like when I got into my car, I would think, I don't want to feel pain because I don't like the pain. It doesn't make me feel like I'm alive. It just hurts. But I just kind of hope that like maybe somebody will crash into me and kill me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
uh yeah, it was really awful, but I still kind of linger with that kind of sensation sometimes, where I just like I don't know how to like instinctively like go back to normal, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I feel like I kind of almost like systematize too much with all that knowledge, and it kind of kills me. So, yeah.
Do you mean you still have like a sort of like aversion to being someone who exists in physical reality, or and you don't want that to be the case, or what?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Like I think that, if I didn't exist, I just like wouldn't have anything to like process. That's kind of where I have that I do think, I do exist, intrinsically, but I feel like a lot of society is just so hollow that I'm like trying to
Yeah.
like find out a way. How can I go back to like being that kind of, I want to go back to feeling like I was when I was younger, where everything just kind of felt, maybe turbulent, yeah, but I still felt like I was alive, and it's just very hard to do that now with everything being like, so systematic and bureaucratic. Like there's just there I can't feel like I can express myself in a normal way, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to do that, and now it's just yeah, it really sucks, but I'm trying to deal with it the best I can.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced something similar with regards to like the loneliness, like the sense of not existing. Because like when I was a kid, like I just had nothing in common with anyone. Like I felt like I could only have like really shallow, surface level conversations. I couldn't really be myself around other people. Like literally no, I just had no one. So I'd spend all my time in the woods, and I would just like talk to myself. And so whenever I would like be authentic around people, it was so weird. Like I felt like I didn't exist. Like I felt like I'd said something, but like it didn't actually. I almost felt like I didn't say it, or what I was saying was totally crazy. So I think like when I got older, like in high school, um, and I started to learn more and more about the internet, and I started to finally find people that were like me. I became like really clingy, and just like whatever friends I could make that like were kind of like me. Um, like I was just like really clingy to those people, and I think I've adjusted. I feel a lot more comfortable socially now. I finally feel like I have a social life. So I'm very grateful for the internet. A lot of people say that the internet, is bad for you socially. I really just don't agree with that. Um, like it's
Yeah, me
certainly
neither.
not. It's not. There are aspects of it that are not natural. There are aspects of it that are unhealthy. But there are other aspects that are very healthy. 'Cause you actually can finally meet people that are like you. So, and I
Yeah,
think
that's
another
pretty much
thing,
what I thought.
and another thing is, I basically argue, and I'm not the only person who argues this, that autism is just like hunter gatherer psychology. It's just atavism. Um, I think autistic people bond over their special interests, and in nature, that's sort of what we would be doing. We would just be like talking about, I don't know, like the number of rocks in some sort of vein that you found in a cave somewhere, or like all the different types of leaves or all the different types of seaweed. And that's sort of how you would systematize your environment. That's how you would learn about your environment, is through collecting and systematizing. And so autistic people seem to, um, if their special interests are not like taken seriously, or they're not you know invested in by other people, then they kind of get um, it's kind of it's hurtful to those people.
Well, you said that this autistic versus allistic thing is sort of a brain structure thing, or it's from birth, but the way you're describing how people would just naturally talk about what's around them, what they're interested in, reminds me also of small children before they get overly socialized. When I used to work
Oh,
retail, children would just want to tell you all the time, specific things like or what they do, with no regard for whether it's interesting for the other person whatsoever. Like, this is my favorite X, my favorite Y. I did this at school, blah blah blah, which
oh,
is
that's a great point.
similar.
Yeah,
And what was
actually,
it with
I get that.
yeah, and what Joseph Nicolosi said, he said that children naturally they want to be delighted in, and what a child is not delighted in, that's when you get all sorts of issues.
and they tend
So
to
it's
be
sort of
delighted
like,
in good. Yeah, autistic people like when other people are interested in what they talk about. So yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, like one thing that I
Oh,
really love, I love it when people like, and this can sound really weird, but I really love it when people like describe me. Like it's almost like even if it's just like totally neutral, like I like being described. I don't know. It's really weird,
Uh-huh.
but I like that feedback.
yeah, I like that too. But something actually came to mind when you were referring to children. And this also kind of like is similar to like I guess the race realism kind of thing. But I've often heard people refer to Japanese as being like autistic like,
Mhm.
and I have to wonder if that has anything to do with their generally more neonatal traits.
Oh, that's a good point. It's an interesting that see these are the kinds of connections that I like to make. This is the stuff I think about all the time, like connecting this topic to that. But that's a very interesting point. They do seem more autistic, and they do have that um, neoteny. Um, so
Yeah, I was wondering if this is maybe um meaning that autism is somehow just manifest in, well, I mean, no, that's already obvious. Like, yeah, autistic people don't I'm losing my words here. They don't adapt to social environments. But yeah, but it seems like autistic people then would be on the same way pre-social before they start learning to, filter what they say out loud and what they share with other people.
yeah, and to fit into a society because
Mm.
um, society is very harsh, so you have to really truncate yourself, and that's really what
Uh-huh.
adulthood is. Adulthood is just
Mm.
because naturally we're very childlike. Um,
Mhm.
naturally people are very silly, but when you socialize them, you get them to take everything really seriously. That's when they become adults. Um, but here's another
Yeah, all
interesting
those
Shannon.
childish all
Yeah,
those childish aspects also come out in sexuality, like in that manga you were talking about. The desire
yeah,
to go back to a childish state.
yeah. And the other thing is, Sam Vaknin was talking about narcissism and how narcissists sort of like they use attention as like feedback, sort of like sonar, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of how it feels like for me, where I mean, I got to be honest, I am kind of an attention seeker. I do want people to pay attention to me, um, and I kind of like use it as feedback to sort of almost like feel like I exist, almost like feel like I'm really here in the room with you. It's sort of a
Mm.
disembodied kind of feeling.
Interesting.
And that disembodied what is it that Nicolosi talked about with homosexuals and that there's like sort of a disconnect between um like the person's brain and their body, right?
I don't recall reading that yet.
Let me pull it up on ChatGPT. But basically, like one thing that Nicolosi pointed out was that like homosexuals, they actually tend to be like pee shy, like they don't like to use public urinals, like and he thought that was like it had something to do with like the disconnect between the brain and the body, and that they kind of feel
It's an uncomfortability with the
disembodied.
body?
It's something like that. Let me look it up. Explain.
The stereotypical homosexual kind of tends to fail at stuff like sports, like high intensity motor skills. So that's interesting. And calisthenics.
Yeah,
Although
that's a good point.
Do you think that like autism also has anything to do with like with the very like dysregulated, I don't know if he was really dysregulated, but very like high intensity emotions, because there are often times where I get like really manic and like really people have said that like, oh well, you sound like the Joker, you sound really like crazy when you laugh or when you get really happy. And I think that's very like akin to like children. Like they have very like high intensity emotions that they'll display, and it just like
Mhm.
doesn't leave me. And it's very
Yeah.
difficult to like put myself in a box where I'm not like I basically don't just like kind of lose it, you know. I don't know if if any of you have like felt that before, but it
Well,
definitely has that with me. But I also have ADHD.
yeah, you're socialized to repress your emotions. Um, and you're socialized kind of to repress a lot of also noises. If you think about like sexuality and how if you think about how adolescents are like masturbating, and they're kind of socialized to repress any sort of like utterance that they would make during sexual activities, and that way when they have sex they're very quiet.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're kind of socialized to repress extreme displays of emotion and also kind of sound.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's a
Autistic people also have some sort of voice volume control issue, which kind of plays into this. They also don't seem to get socialized to repress the sound of their voice, which a lot of people do. A lot of people get self-conscious about it.
I see. Here's Joseph Nicolosi and the brain body connection. It says Nicolosi believed same-sex attraction was not primarily about sexuality, but about a deep emotional wound tied to identity and the body. In his view, a boy experiences emotional detachment, rejection, or shaming from the father or male peers. He internalizes a sense of being inadequate as a male. This creates what Nicolosi called a gender identity deficit. The body then eroticizes what the psyche feels it lacks. So the attraction is not about sex in his theory. It is the brain's attempt to heal a wound through the body.
Oh,
So
oh
he,
yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now, how he gets his patients to like start doing physical activities like sports and bike riding and trying to make friends who do physical activities with them because they kind of view the external expression of masculinity and control of the body by other men to be something that is kind of mysterious to them and something that they desire because they lack it within themselves or are unconnected to it and they want to
yeah,
vicariously experience it. There are a lot of patterns related to vicarious experience in homosexuality, and I'll tell you about another one. Is that I thought of this recently, but it's related to pederasty.
mhm,
And I had there's kind of this long heritage of pederast, which is like the Socrates,
y-
Alcibiades
yeah,
thing, like in the symposium where he talks about how there's supposed to be this like sexual mentorship where you exchange knowledge.
mhm.
It kind of seems to me like pederasty rather than being because a lot of people assume that it's kind of related to kind of a normal functional sexuality, how men tend to desire like young fertile women, but I don't actually think that's the case, and I think that there's a sort of transference going on between these men and the younger men, where they want to vicariously experience being comforted um, by an older male figure, which they didn't get by trying to give that sort of care or love to a younger male who's deprived of it and thus kind of vicarious experience it themselves, which
Mhm.
I think is highly related. And I just read a novel that's kind of about this. It was a speculative novel called Plastic Soul by James Newlick. I've been thinking about this for a while, but he pretty much embodies it because the whole point of the sci-fi novel is that you can pay like $700,000 to create a clone of yourself at a young age. And pretty much the
Mhm.
longest story is about a guy who has like an unrequited crush in um in high school between with his straight friend, and he's very obsessed with the idea. It's not a very sexual crush, although it expresses sexually in some ways. But he's very obsessed with the idea of just being held and squeezed by the other guy. And then
Mhm.
it eventually turns out that he creates a clone of himself. He pays for this clone, and he sets it down to around his high school age rather than because his desire for like romantic partners never aged up with him. He always remained kind of frozen at the high school level. It seems like the object of his affection it's almost like a narcissistic desire to love the self and give like a younger version of yourself the kind of love that you wanted really badly but never experienced.
Oh,
I think
that's what that
drive.
is.
Yeah, I
Because
think that's a bit
I've
pederast.
noticed, there are vicarious relationships like that where like one child will be favored over the other. And it's kind of like the parents are living vicariously through that child, or a parent is living
Yeah,
vicariously through that child. Like, oh, like you're like this, yeah. So like,
you're an athlete. Yeah, and
so like if there's a child that's very much like you, if there's a child that reminds you so much of yourself, then you pay way too much attention to this child. You live vicariously through them.
yeah, and I think pederasty is kind of like it's a very similar. It's like compensation for a parental deficit that you had, and you kind of want to provide kind of parental role to the.
Yeah, that makes a lot of. I think that's probably the answer, honestly.
Yeah, I noticed this primarily because I'm homosexual, or I was homosexual at one point. And as I started to get older, I noticed that I only used to want to date older men because I had a very strong desire for, kind of this sort of, the parental surrogate thing. But as I got older, my homosexual desires kind of shifted around to my adolescence, like 16 to 18, and I was like, I want to figure out why that is because that doesn't really make any sense because this wasn't the profile I was attracted to at all. And then I kind of put it together a year or two ago, and this novel basically made me think that this guy who it's a semi-autobiographical novel. I assume he's writing about himself, but he has the same kind of connections, and he kind of this guy
Yeah,
actually creating and then having sex with his own clone and being a father to its own clone. They used the word adopt for the clone. And when you buy the clone, you adopt them. So he adopts the clone, but then he has sex with it too. So there's
yeah,
this
and
whole
maybe that's also the reason why maybe that's like the emotional motivation of cougars, right? Maybe that's why that's why they get interested in young guys. It's not just because, I mean, because think about it, it's just like weird. It's just like a weird relationship. So
you think that their son never gave them the love that they wanted or something, or they never got to
there's
have a
something with
son or
the
something like
son.
that.
There must
Yeah,
be maybe something like that, or maybe
yeah, that would make
yeah,
sense. But to be honest, like female psychology is very, it's very, very foreign to me. So I couldn't begin to speculate. But that sounds plausible. Yeah.
I mean, I thought about studying like cougar relationships. Like, I just don't know of many. I mean, I could look at like I don't know, what is it, the Macron? And Macron is like in some weird cougar relationship or something. I'd have to look at some cases. Um, but honestly though, like you can figure a lot of this stuff out just by looking at cases. If you just look at
I
lots and lots of cases, you see the threads, and it usually becomes kind of obvious.
I wonder if in like 20 years or 30 years, Kabi Nagata will get like a 20-year-old girlfriend or something and like hug her a lot. Because this
Yeah,
is what I was
maybe. I don't know.
with the yeah, this is what I was thinking about when she was hiring the prostitutes and like wanting to be hugged by them. I was like, at some point, is she going to engage in this sort of transference? That was in the back of my mind, but I obviously these things are never one to one and happen constantly. But yeah, I think that's one major psychological profile.
Yeah, and what else? I think it's interesting how controversial the topic is. You really cannot talk about this stuff anywhere. Like there's no you like there really isn't a camp where you can really openly talk about this stuff and how all this stuff works. Because I talked a little bit about it on this forum called what is it, chuds.life or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's some people just they get real they think like I'm trying to, I don't know, like normalize homosexuality. Or here's my opinion on it. Like
Hmm.
it comes from a place of trauma. So
Hmm.
you can like you have to, as a society, you do have some responsibility to, fix people that are that are traumatized.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward. So you do kind of, to some extent, you have to be a little sympathetic. I'm not saying necessarily that these kinds of relationships should be legal. But I'm
Hmm.
just saying that, like you do have to like meet them a little, even just a little bit halfway.
Yeah.
So, I often, the thing is, I tend to have more like syncretic opinions. Like I tend to like borrow from different camps. I don't even really like syncretic politics because it usually isn't. It usually misunderstands politics. Like like Nazballism, for example, misunderstands like how politics and economics works. For example, it's like trying to marry these two like very different systems, but it's looking at the similarities, and it's kind of so I'm not like a Nazball or anything like that. But what I am saying is that like if we're going to build a civilization where we actually just like solve all of these problems, well, you actually have to solve the problem, and that means being nuanced. That means being to some extent sensitive to these issues. So
Yeah. But there's no middle ground because there's what I guess you would call that a lack of sensitivity on one side, but a hypersensitivity on the other side to where they don't even want to pry. They just want to instead take the issues and say they're natural and that there's nothing actually wrong with these behaviors being exhibited and repeated. So on both ends, you're kind of screwed. Like you can't talk about it with either side. Like you can't talk about it with the right wing. Sure, like you really can't talk about it with the left wing because
yeah,
they're
I
going
don't
to
know. 'Cause
assume.
they're just committed to having those
Yeah.
opinions. Like even like with Japan, like they just have to have the worst opinion on that. Like their new thing is running around saying that Japan is an awful country. It has like terrible rates of sexual assault when it doesn't, and it has some of the lowest rates on earth. But they pretend like, oh, look at this case and this and that. They always have to have the worst opinions. Like
I'm
so.
actually a lot. I'm actually a lot more socialized in left wing than right wing spaces because of a lot of my associations and old opinions, and some current opinions. But I don't want to get into that on the podcast. But the only
I
way
mean,
I've
you
been able to
can.
talk about this stuff.
This is a pretty weird. You gotta understand. This is like the weird. This is like the weird part of like the far right. Like I think this is probably the weirdest part. So
I feel like I don't know where I walked into, but anyway, yeah, the only way I've been able to talk about stuff like this is by ingratiating myself with people for like over 2 years with like very safe opinions, and then like kind of sneaking in conversation about this using really like shibbolethic kind of terminology, and couching it and
yeah,
all of this
yeah, you
like
can be authentic.
these things are really yeah, you have to couch it in all of this like weird like theoretical terminology and relate it to like social issues and power dynamics with like social things like all these things they make up about like oppression and shit. To
Yeah,
speaking in that language and kind of code switching, but you really can't just. The reality is that a lot of this, once you make the connections, is a lot simpler than you'd think, and you really can't just talk about it. And a lot of the conclusions Nicolosi comes up with are also very simplistic and like intuitive. Like they're actually very intuitive. But the moment you start saying that, people say, "Oh, it's gay conversion therapy." That's like that's already been scientifically
yeah,
proven not to work. That's a crock of shit. It's like where do you even start? Probably nowhere.
yeah. And what's really surprising though, because back in like the early days of like the alt right, like back in like I guess you can't call these early days, but like back in like 2017, 2018, 2019, like and I think it's still like kind of right wingers will still bring up the fact that homosexuality is like associated with trauma. Um but I don't know, they're just really like they can't fully commit to the idea. It's really weird. Like they will try to
It's more
find
like yeah, it's more like a smear. It's like, oh, their uncles touched them, but then it's like, oh, they're disgusting. I don't want anything to do with them. Like, because if
yeah,
they're
so
lesbian,
it's just because
as
if
like
like
both ends.
if it is trauma, like if it is trauma, then you do have to treat them a little nicer. But
Uh-huh.
they don't want to, so they go, well, I don't know, maybe it's like dysgenics or something. I don't know, maybe it's something like that. But I feel like nobody really has a clear position on it. I feel like nobody really has any clear answers about how homosexuality works, and I really think it's pretty simple. I think it's trauma. I think like with like what Count Orlock said, like yeah, there can be like things like like diet or maybe like genetic make one more predisposed to turning gay. But I think overall, I think it's just I think it's pretty simple. It's just that the mechanics of it aren't entirely understood. I don't think. I don't
Yeah,
like. I wouldn't. I don't think
I have
Nick Pelosi
sympathy.
entirely understands it, nor do I think his son does.
I have sympathy between the whole, diet correlation thing with homosexuality, just because I do think that there's a lot of environmental factors that go into the rise of autism. So, and I do think that's
Yeah,
highly correlated with homosexuality and transsexuality and such. So I do think there's something there. I just think it's kind of an error in kind of attributing the causation.
yeah,
But I think it's kind of like a both situation.
yeah.
Because every time I
Counter.
think about every time I think about my own experiences with homosexuality, it's clearly like based on trauma, but maybe I'm over universalizing myself too much. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of do that all the time. I am always universal universalizing stuff I've never experienced myself. I'm always
Mhm.
projecting onto people because it's I don't know because it's fun. But
Yeah.
Count Orcock, was there anything that you wanted to say?
Um, I don't really know what to say at this point now, but I liked talking and really for the most part I was just listening to all of you, and some of these things were kind of new to me, but I think that it's all very like fascinating to me. So yeah, I don't know what else to say to that.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about tonight before we head off? Do you want to open another topic, or did you get everything off your chest?
Um.
Um, I guess I don't know. I mean, without going into my own very like specific, interests and things, I think it's I guess I don't know if this pertains to it or anything. Maybe we can go on to like another stream about very specific interests and how, dismissive some people can be of that. Like, for example, my interest in again, like going back to Robert Eggers movies and how he brings them out of how he takes these periods and he kind of conjures them into a realm where you believe that these things could happen, and I find that to be very very interesting. And it really makes it feel very like human and alive and really like foreign, and that intrigues me. And when when I see somebody not have that same kind of interest, and maybe they think that it's like something like the Odyssey that Christopher Nolan was creating, and how it really just feels like, by contrast, very uninspired. It's just like I don't understand like why somebody can be so forgiving of that when you can recreate something. I don't know, it's not really all that important to anything being discussed now, but that's just an example of just very
Yeah,
particular interests and whatever.
I'd be interested in talking about sort of aesthetic taste and media taste in society another time though, because I'm interested in that topic.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we could probably discuss that on another time. So
Yeah.
I'm very
I
big into
was really
that.
interested in Oh, sorry. Were
No,
you gonna
no,
say?
I just said I was really big into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really interested in like leftist psychology. Because I've been thinking a lot about that with respect to trauma. I've been thinking a lot about political views and their traumatic influence. So, because I actually have a lot to say about leftism. I think that leftism is actually just atavistic behavior. I think it's just a tribal tendency,
Uh,
and I think that even just like the particular eccentricities of their behavior is like, for example, their interest in novelty goods. Like that to me is just like it's that same kind of hunter gatherer psychology. You got to go out and collect some kind of neat thing, right? So when you go,
you have to trade all of your furs for some broken glass that the settlers have brought over. You have to for some broken wheel spokes that you've never seen before. That becomes really valuable.
yeah. But there's this store that I went to once. It's called King, and it's in Beacon, New York. Look up Little King and look at the website, like the catalog. Like that's the kind of stuff that like leftists buy. It's like this like really colorful, quirky, exotic, like really odd stuff, like really
It's
eclectic
like
stuff.
tableware and stuff. Okay.
But like look through the catalog. They have like weird
Okay.
marshmallows and like um it's like weird foreign board games and like that's the kind of stuff that leftists buy and put in their homes. And it's
Hmm.
kind of like, oh, look at this cool neat thing I have. It's like beet juice with like I don't know, guava, blah blah blah, like dragon fruit or like I don't know, it's like some algae from Japan or something. Um, that's why
It's
they're obsessed with novelty.
yeah, it's Quirk Cell shit,
Yeah,
basically.
Interesting. I've never seen a store like this before. I'm looking at it now.
yeah, but
Well,
Very
I
colorful.
guess
It's very like Wes Anderson kind of palette.
yeah, but I basically argue that owned by the way, it's owned by two gay guys. Um,
not surprised.
so yeah, but
Um,
I basically argue that leftism is just a tendency towards like tribal communalism, and I
Mm.
mean this like across the board. I don't just mean economic leftism because I'm not the first person to make that connection, but
Mm. Pretty obvious, yeah.
like that's why they're obsessed with things like little libraries, why they're obsessed with like community gardens, worker co-ops, public
Mm.
transport, vintage. Like they're obsessed with things that they really shouldn't be, like because they tend to pop like a futuristic movement, one
Mm.
that's casting away tradition, but they kind of fetishize things like strip malls. They fetishize traditional urban planning, this stuff that's like really old,
Well,
stuff that's really
leftism doesn't necessarily strike me as futuristic. There's the idea of, degrowth communism and going back to a less industrialized state and a more sustainable state. I don't know if I necessarily think leftism would be kind of a futurist. I think kind of the 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 market is more futuristic. They want to get rid of the market. That's a big driver of innovation. I don't think they very much care for kind of this sort of futuristic society.
I mean, I think in the past they did. I think in the past they postured um as futurists, but nowadays like futurism is kind of dying because
Yeah.
we actually just sort of live under liberalism. We actually just have all these gadgets and all these things, and it
Yeah.
kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So they're leaning more into the authenticity. They're leaning more into the aspects than ever before.
Mm.
So that's why I mean, it's hilarious. They're obsessing over strip malls now, and they're saying that strip malls are actually, maybe kind of cool, maybe kind of beast.
very quirky chungus. Yes, very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's
I
where
haven't heard of that
leftism is
before. That's
nowadays.
funny. I'll have to look that up.
Do you think that they're obsessed with like liminal spaces? Because I actually really like that kind of liminal space aesthetic.
They you do have like this like strain of like autistic redditor that's like obsessed with something that's kind of cool, but like they kind of ruin it. Like they'll become obsessed with I don't know vaporwave, for example, or they get obsessed with Memphis Milano, and they'll start some sort of business centered around products that look like Memphis Milano or something like that. But they'll
Mm.
be like leftist and annoying. So yeah,
Like
Very
applying like a political thing where it like has nothing to do with the actual thing that they're talking about, right?
yeah, where they make something political when it's not political, or
interesting.
when they just sort of realize that there are tons of leftists around them, and then they just start being themselves. That's kind of what I think happens. But there is like leftism is it's silly to define leftism based on economics or politics. I think it's really just it's a because you have to think about it think about it think about it in the way that Clotaire Rapaille does. And I told you guys to look up Rapaille earlier. He's the guy who basically argues that every culture has a code. And he's a bit of a charlatan, but I like his idea. You have to look at, what is the code of leftism, right? What is the, how do you encapsulate the entire phenomenon simply? And I think it has to be commune. That has to be the code for leftism, right? It has to be the tribe.
Does that mean that leftists are more autistic? Because
And I've been
that's
thinking
added.
about that. Like,
Yeah.
look at there's this guy named Card Posting.
I know. Yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has this like very glassy look on his face, and he's like very, very rigid. I remember I sent him a video that he probably would have agreed with. It was about the problem of sublimation under capitalism, and I remember he watched 10 seconds of it, and the woman who was making the presentation said something about some BBC show that was incorrect. Like, it was something about how some sci-fi show was produced for some network or something. She got it wrong, and he told me that he paused the video and just did not watch the rest of it because she made that mistake. So he's definitely autistic.
Yeah.
And like,
funny.
he's living in a shack in the middle of Australia. It's just like, okay. And there's always this like inauthentic, LARPy attempt at authenticity with leftists. They're always LARPing as something. They are the most prominent LARPers. I think they're way bigger LARPers than the people that dress up in Nazi uniforms. Okay, I think that because these people like really believe it. Like, they really believe that by putting up a bulletin board in, I don't know, a mall somewhere, that they're going to connect with the entire community, and the community is going to do all these cool things together, and blah 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 blah. Or like, you look at there was this Reddit post where it was like this Reddit thing where there was this old man who put up a flyer somewhere, and he said, "Come have a smoke with me," and the Redditors were all soying over this old man putting up a flyer so that people could all hang out with this old man. Like, oh my god, this man, wow, this guy is so cool. It's like just an old man putting up a dumbass flyer. I mean, and you see that, and you know instinctively that's Reddit. You know instinctively that's like a left thing. And it's this weird community-based aspect. And I really think that there's something traumatic going on here. I feel like when you're traumatized, you can not only regress to a childlike state, but you can also regress to a primitive state, to a a tribal mindset. So maybe that's the reason why leftists were always called savages, right? Why they were always called anarchists.
What is savage a colloquial term for anarchist, or?
Well, no, like,
Or they just
reactionaries would call them.
Oh, I got
Reactionaries
it.
would call their political beliefs savage.
Oh,
There's
because
something
they want to go back to a
primitive about it.
non-governmental structure like a savage. Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like, there's something.
I have anarchists, so I can't speak to it, but it's interesting. I wonder if it springs from some trauma. I have to think about that. I've never thought about it before.
Yeah, I mean, because like the thing is, like, anarchism or communism or whatever, like, in nature, it does produce intense euphoria. Like, that is the way that we're naturally supposed to live. It's just that now we live in a civilized system where you have, the guy with the spear telling everybody what to do.
Yep.
You're not going to undo that system, so you have to live in civilization now. And there's some people that just can't handle it. And I think those people become leftists. I think those people get pushed into things like anarchism. Because I've even seen people that were like traumatized, like people that grew up in abusive families, and they become obsessed with anarchism. And they become obsessed with the concept of freedom. Or like, what was it? There's that study talking about how libertarians don't really love their families. They don't really have much interest in them. and what was it? Leftists also have weird opinions about their families. They tend to say that they prefer all people generally over their families, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
so
the
maybe
opposite. That seems like the opposite of atavistic. That seems very strangely futuristic. It doesn't seem like atavistic at all because you have a very strong connection to your own blood in nature.
yeah, but I think I don't know. I feel like it might be different because if you think about like the racial tendencies of conservatives, right? Well, race is like a mass concept. It's a concept of mass competition, right?
Yeah,
It's a large. It's basically like inborn nationalism that you feel disgust towards this large group. Whereas I think a small tribe, they'd probably like pretty open to outsiders, right? If you could get any help you need, or if you can get any help you can, you'll get it, right? Like if someone comes along and they have something,
maybe I don't know. There was a lot of tribal warfare among the natives of America before we came here, so I'm not actually sure because it was excessively violent in the Americas prior to them being colonized. But
yeah,
maybe
that
that's
is a good
they
point.
were wider, bigger civilizations. But you tend to get the impression, although I haven't researched this enough to actually say, but you tend to get the impression that they're kind of tight knit, and
Leftists?
very much based on like bloodline.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
tribes. Yeah, tribes.
the tribes. You kind of get the impression they're very tight knit, but I'm actually not sure. I would have to look more into that.
Yeah, I'd have to research it more. Um, but I really think that it's a tribal tendency
Yeah, that's
because
interesting.
because it's not just their politics that's leftist. It's also the way that they do things. It's like their style of and like their interests and everything like that.
Hmm.
So maybe leftism, modern leftism, is just sort of out of context. Maybe in the past it was like more integrated into civilization, and it's just sort of gone awry because of I don't, the tribe and its influence,
Yeah,
and
that's interesting.
and so forth. Like most of us would be like peasants back in the old days. Like
For sure.
we mostly be living on farms and stuff. And what was it? So in a modern democracy, right? You have all these low class people getting into positions of influence, and a lot of them are smart people, but they're low class. They have low class ideas about how things should be run. They don't come from good breeding, right? And so like you get these smart hillbillies running things, right? And
Hmm.
maybe that's why leftists are so hung up about hillbillies and how rednecks are the stupidest people on earth. Maybe it's just because they're insecure and they realize that their temperament is low class.
That's interesting.
So
That's totally against the signaling for leftists though, because they're all about uplifting. They're all about dismantling, the ideas of cultural class and uplifting, like, urban culture.
yeah, it's almost like
It's kind of contradictory, but you do kind of make a point at the same time, so it's interesting.
yeah. So I'll have to sort a lot of these ideas out, but um I guess that's really it for today. I think we've
Yeah.
gone on long enough. But it was a pleasure to have you guys. Is there anything you wanted to talk about, Count Orcock, before we wrap up?
Well, I just kind of thought it was interesting that, you were talking about those kind of smart hillbillies, and that, these kind of middle of the road IQ type people are, conservative backgrounds are generally more competent, like generally speaking, than many of these like leftists who are very like heady, and they have these very particular things that don't really apply practically in the world. So I,
Mm.
and with that kind of, oh well, fuck you, hillbilly, you're just a dumb, Christian white, you're a big bad white. And I think it really does like come down to, for at least some of them, that that they basically don't like them. Well, for one thing, because they're envious that they can apply things more practically, but also it just kind of represents the fact that that they're white, they're competent, they just like do things well. And yeah, I mean, basically it's just like envy, and disdain. But I think sometimes it's like there are some times where I would say, sorry, I got fluid in my ears. It's draining through my nose. But anyway, the sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. So that sometimes they have very like erroneous beliefs, with the evangelical Christianity. I have plenty of things that I could say to that. That they might be abusive, but there's nothing inherently there that suggests that they will be stupid or abusive. They just kind of do that because, again, they are traumatized people, and they just don't like the symbology of competent white people. And but there are cases where that does not apply. There are leftists who I have seen that do try to appeal to to Appalachian people, like most notably,
Oh
very
my
interestingly,
god.
what
The what do they called? What do they call them again? What is the term for like a leftist hillbilly? Oh,
uh
hicklib.
uh
Hicklibs. Oh my
Hicklib,
god.
yeah.
It's so cringe. It's so
What?
Well, I Hicklib, yeah, like
Oh,
Hicklibs,
okay.
yeah. But I saw Bernie Sanders go to to the Appalachian regions where they don't really get government assistance, and they genuinely are like fairly overlooked, like as a community, as a people. But that was one of those very interesting exceptions where like it kind of makes me wonder if like Bernie Sanders himself is like very much like actually genuine in that kind of pursuit. Because I oftentimes like think that like leftists, I don't actually give a shit about equality. They just don't like white people. But there are some people who are like, yeah, no, like they are an overlooked people, and they ought to have like some kind of voice in something. But more often than not, they're portrayed very badly, so they don't really get anyone to talk about their issues. So
yeah. I mean,
that's all I have to say to that.
I honestly feel like a lot of that what is it with the tankies? I really feel like their interest in the lower classes. I feel like it is a bit performative though. Like I feel like even though
Yeah.
they realize that they should be doing that and they actually do try to do it, I really feel like it's fake. Like I think the whole MAGA communism thing is so cringe and inauthentic. And really their whole movement is inauthentic because if you think about it, they're a bunch of cavemen trying to do caveman things in civilization, and all of it is just really fake and gay. So, um,
True.
and here's another idea I had, and this is an idea I had the other day. Um, Again with Zip, we are everything about our behavior is economical, but our behavior economizes over time. So, like our route to work, for example, over time he gets like more and more economical. We get there a little bit faster, and we avoid certain roads and so on to conserve effort.
Yeah.
Um, well, this happens even when you are pampered and sheltered and don't have any problems in your life. So even when you are wealthy, you will try to economize for effort. And so what I think happens is that leftists, when because a lot of them come from these like ritzy areas where there's not a lot of struggle, there's not a lot of strife, that come from affluent areas. I think what happens is that they start to economize towards their deepest desires. And those deepest desires are our primitive instincts to have a commune and live in a communal fashion. So I think that's what's going on.
That's interesting. Yeah, I consider myself coming from a very comfortable house too, and I'm very strongly interested in anarchism, so it's interesting.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
same here. I came from a pretty decent, I mean, not super affluent, but decent, middle class household. But I don't know if that's achievable for me, and I don't know if it's desirable for me either. I'm not really sure where I'm going to be going with any of this. But I kind of do have the sense that technology, in a sense, is and further progression of technology is there's something hubristic in that, for various different reasons that we could probably go on to on another stream, because I don't want to
I see.
overtalk everything again.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. Anyways, it's been really awesome to have you guys on the stream. That's really all I wanted to say. I thought you guys were really interesting, and we'll definitely do it again.
I had fun, yeah. So I'll
Yeah,
come
I
back on.
liked it.
Yeah, cool.
All right, till next time then.
So, yeah, you guys have a lovely day.
All right.
Thank you very much, Johnny, and you too, Normie.
Yep. See you later, Count Orcock and Johnny. Bye bye.